All right, early season predictions for the Eastern Conference. Let's go. All right, this is going to require some explanation because at first glance it looks kind of like what's going on here. So let's talk about it. We're going to start in the Atlantic. First off, I got Toronto. Toronto with that top six and pretty much the same decor. They're going to be just about as good as they were last year, about the same. I don't really have any questions about Toronto in the regular season. It's more of the postseason. They finally got out of round one, but they're still one of the best regular season teams in the entire NHL. There's no question. Number two, I got Buffalo making that massive leap. I think it's time. They got a lot of young talent. They're a top tier scoring team. The big question with them is really defense and goaltending. We saw I don't remember the GM's name, I'm not going to lie, but the GM start to really focus on that defense, focus on defense from forwards by acquiring guys like Jordan Greenway. Um, I think it's going to start coming together for Buffalo. I think their defense is going to grow quite a bit, and they're going to be a very competitive, hard to beat team. Big questions, again, are how much defense their forwards are going to play because they need defense contributions from their forwards. And who's going to start in net? Is it going to be Devin Levi? Is he the guy for a whole season? Is he ready to be an NHL starter at this point? I don't know. I don't think anyone really has an answer. There's a lot of hype around him, but we haven't seen a whole lot of Devin Levi play in the NHL just yet, so we'll see what happens. Tampa, pretty consistent, probably going to end up in third, probably going to finish somewhere around that 95-point mark, or probably a little higher. Probably like 98 to like 104 points. That'd be my best guess. Boston, wearing the Boston hat because I think they're going to be the biggest dropper in points of almost everybody. I think everybody. I didn't really do the points thing, but Boston, no Bergeron, no Krejci. They lost some rentals. They lose Tomas Nosek as the fourth line center, who is huge on their penalty kill, huge in those gritty areas, and provided some grit. No Nick Foligno on that fourth line. Lack of leadership is lost from a few guys leaving. There's a lot of questions. So we go back last year, record season. They had Bergeron, Krejci, 1-2. The season before, they only had Bergeron. They were about 100-point team. Right? And that's with Bergeron. Now you don't have a top one or two center. I'd expect this team to fall back a little more. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on the defense and goaltending to really keep pace. And with more pressure, typically comes more goals against. So I think Boston's going to be relying a lot more on their defense, and I think it's going to be a challenge. I don't think they're going to be nearly as good as they were the last two seasons. I have them in Florida squeaking just above the playoff line, if I'm being honest. Florida, I don't think really got much better or worse. They lose Declare. They were already a fringe playoff team coming into this year. Again, pretty solid team. They were the President's Trophy winner a couple years ago. They're going to start the season off with Montour and Ekblad both on the IR. So they're going to have guys in the lineup like Kulikov and Ekman Larson. There was another one that's just slipping my brain right now, but aren't the most reliable defensemen in their own zone. A lot of questionable defense with, at the very least, three of those players. So they're really going to want Ekblad and Montour to be back ASAP. So I think they're going to take a little step back at the beginning and start finishing the season strong. Again, assuming Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight are capable, I think they're a playoff team, but just barely yet again. Sixth place, I have Ottawa. I really like their offense. I like the direction they're going. Their defense is all right, especially their top four. They're still growing. They're still, getting through this rebuild. The bottom two pairing defensemen I have questions about, and the goaltending. It's like, is Korpisalo or Forsberg, like, are those your guys? I have big questions about that. There's also the matter of the forwards playing defense in Ottawa. Again, the defense, for the most part, the defensive players are fine. But if you're only relying on those two defensive players that are back in the zone defending, it could be a 3 to a 5-on-2, and more often than not, that results in a goal. So you need your forwards to come back, play defense. You need your forwards to keep the puck in the opposite offensive zone, cycling the puck, getting shots on net, to keep pressure off your defense and your goaltending. That also helps. Ottawa, I don't think is there yet. I don't think they take much of a jump. It's probably They probably gain like a couple points, but I don't see them really making a big jump this year. Detroit, I know I'm going to get hate for this. Detroit, I have them finishing around the same spot they did last year, maybe even a point or two worse. Let me explain. They got DeBrincat. They did some other things, which are fine. But they also lost Hronek and Bertuzzi at the trade deadline. Everyone's focusing on the offseason. I think they got a little better this offseason. But when you factor in this offseason and the trade deadline, I think they got a little worse. And that's okay. They're still rebuilding. It's a long-term process. It's okay. But I have a lot of concerns about their defense and somewhat their goaltending. I have a lot of trust in Ville Husso, but he needs a decent defense in front of him to perform. Ville Husso, love the dude. I got a lot of questions about that defense, and goaltending and defense go hand in hand. So it's great they got DeBrincat. Great player, should play on that top line. But there were questions with both their offense and defense last season. I don't see them really making that next step or improving a whole lot, at least this year. We'll see. They could make some big moves. But anyway, in last place, Montreal. They're coming out of it. I think they're going to be better than what they were. I like the direction they're going in. Again, I'm a Bruins fan. Hate Montreal. I got to mention that every time because, man, hate Montreal. But they've done an incredible job with this rebuild. I don't think it's going to be all that long. This might be the last year they're actually in last place in their division. They're going to start building up. They're going to start having guys produce at a higher rate like Slafkovsky. Number one pick, was it? I don't even remember, last year or whatever. The years all blend together at this point. I'm getting old. Don't get old. So we should see this team really start to build off of the success and the little victories it had last year. They're starting to build for the future. They're not ready to compete yet, and they made it pretty clear with what they did this offseason and at the trade deadline. But they're coming. They're coming. They're going to start gaining ground real quick in the next few years, just not this year. Metropolitan. This was kind of hard. So I picked New Jersey at first. These top three teams, the New Jersey Devils, New York Rangers, Carolina Hurricanes, I think they're all going to be neck and neck. But I have questions about all three of them. New Jersey is their defense. Are you going to get production from? Are you going to get consistent defense from guys like Kevin Ball playing in a larger role and so on? And their goaltending, is it Schmid? Is it Vanacek? I picked them to go number one because I could see it kind of working out. Schmid could be your guy. Vanacek plays decent. Oh my goodness, decent. But as long as they play pretty adequate defense, they'll be all right. New York Rangers, my concern was just depth, scoring depth. You got to have those younger guys, Kakko and Heedle's fine. Kakko, Lafreniere really take that next step, but being stuck on that third line, they're producing pretty league average for a third line player. But you need a little more production from your top six, and the likes of Wheeler will help. Panarin's over a point per game, but you need guys like Zibanejad and Kreider to step up a little more than they did last year. Love Mika, no hate to him, but you need a little more offensive production from them than you had. Their defense is pretty much the same. I like their defense. They're young. They're growing really well together. They're playing responsible in their own zone. They got Shesterkin. Honestly, I like this team's depth the best of these three, but my issue was their backup goaltender, which is going to be Jonathan Quick, allegedly. And if he's there, he plays 20, 25 games, right? So you're relying on Shesterkin to play 55 to 60 games, which is fair. How many games is Quick going to win you, and how many is he going to lose you at this point in his career? He's definitely on the decline. He's not the same Quick he used to be. That could be another extra 10 losses for the Rangers, which could be the difference between first, second, or third. But I have the Carolina Hurricanes in third, and it really comes down to their depth, their offensive depth. I think their defense is fine. They have a lot of offensive defensemen. I think they have, three? But they're all paired with defensive defensemen, so it can work out. They have a lot of depth in the AHL, a lot of call-ups they can make, capable NHL-ready players. really comes down to the scoring. Is Bunting going to be a top six forward? If he's putting up zero point 0.6 points per game on a line with Matthews and Marner, two of the most prolific offensive players in the league, what's his production going to look like playing next to Sebastian Aho, who wasn't a point per game player last year? Elite player, especially on defense, but he was not a point per game player. It's going to be a lot less offense coming from that, coming from a Carolina Hurricanes top six than a Maple Leafs top six. And that's okay. It's a completely different style of play. I like Carolina Hurricanes and how they approach the game in terms of defense first, defense from your forwards, team defense. And then your defense provides a little offense chip in, and it really makes a difference. I love Carolina Hurricane setup, but I have questions. Is Kotkaniemi your second line center? Jordan Staal's your third, and Drury's your fourth. What's going on there? Is Kotkaniemi going to be the guy at second in your second line? I have questions about that. I have a lot of questions about Carolina being able to score goals, as I do with Boston. Hand in hand, man. But of these three teams, Jersey, New York, Rangers, Carolina, Buffalo, or Toronto, I could see them all being well over 110. Buffalo, I don't know if they're going to reach that, maybe like 104, 105. And that's really it for 100-point teams in the Eastern Conference that I have. I think the difference between 3 and 4 is going to be a lot bigger than we'd expect. But let me explain, because this is a little different than what other people are predicting. I got the New York Islanders in fourth. I don't think they got a whole lot worse. I think they got a little worse. They got Bo Horvat for a full year, which is fine. They got Brock Nelson, who can put the puck in the net. They have some pieces, but they didn't have a single player last year that had a point per game, that scored at a point per game rate or better. They didn't, which is unusual. They have strong defense. They have strong goaltending. But they lose a 20-goal scorer in Zach Parise. At the moment, he's not at training camp. He's in Minnesota at home. I don't know. I don't know what you do to replace that. If Bo Horvat is your replacement, if you're hoping to get a few more goals, maybe like a 30-goal season out of Horvat rather than a 20-goal season. But that means your offense is still fairly anemic. So I have a lot of questions about that. You can play good defense, but you need to score a goal, at least a goal a game, to win. So big question with scoring goals with the Islanders. Columbus, I got in fifth. I also have the Island, this is the playoff line. So Islanders down, I have missing the playoffs. Columbus Blue Jackets, I think they were really injury-ridden last year. And I think injecting a guy like Fantilli, who's already played against men for the most part, we've seen a lot of success from guys in the NCAA coming into the NHL and being NHL ready. I think Fantilli's going to be a great addition to that lineup. You're going to have guys like Werenski there for the whole season, barring injury. You're going to have a lot of guys that were injured last year full-time in your lineup and are difference makers. I like the team, and they have depth. If they call up Juracek, I think he'd be a fantastic addition to that blue line. They've made a lot of moves on the blue line. They have Provorov now, can bolster their offense. They have Severson, and if deployed right, good. They have to deploy him right, though. Babcock, one of those, I don't know how this is going to work out, coaches. But should, at the very least, light some type of spark under the team for the first few games. Hopefully it lasts the whole season. We'll see. But I don't have too many questions about Pittsburgh. They're trending in the right direction. They're going to, Columbus. They're getting there. I don't think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're a last place team like they were this past season. Pittsburgh, I do have a lot of concerns. Let me pull up this depth chart real quick. So you have Riley Smith, he scored 26 goals. I got a stats right here. 26 goals. You have Crosby. We could throw Brian Rust in there. Malkin and Raquel and Jake Getzel, right? That's 6 guys in your top 6. Great. Rust needs to produce a little more. Played mostly on the second line last year, right? Had 46 points in 81 games. So production for a top 6 forward offensively was not there from Brian Rust. And you know what? That's fine, because you got the other 5 guys producing at a pretty good clip. But injuries, is Malkin and Crosby both going to last a whole nother season without getting injured late into their 30s? I have questions about that. And then once you get beyond that, there's not a whole lot of scoring. There's some good defensive forwards, but there's not a whole lot of scoring depth there. You have two guys scoring above a .35 points per game rate, which is not good. One of them's Vinny Hinostroza, who played 26 games last year. So for a third line and fourth line, but bottom six, you need a little more production from them. I have concerns with that. I also have concerns with the defense. I think it's fine. I love Graves, Erik Karlsson. We'll talk about him. I love Peterson, whatever you want to call him. I think it's pronounced Pedersen. Chris Letang, fine. And you got the third line pairing, which is pretty consistent. Oliver Joseph. Man, my speaking is rough. Chad Ruhwedel. So Chris Letang, probably not the power play guy anymore. Probably not as offensive oriented as he has been. And he's good offensively, there's no doubt. Great skater, pretty good point guy on the power play. Been doing it for, well over a decade at this point. That's going to be taken by Erik Karlsson. Fine. Erik Karlsson is a power play specialist, and that's great. He's also a massive defensive liability. And when he's has to share the offensive defenseman role, his production tends to decrease significantly, and that's just been a pattern. There's been a lot of risk with acquiring Erik Karlsson. He's a great offensive player. There's not a whole lot of defense there. Are you going to totally lost my train of thought there. Are you going to? I guess we can look at his stats, right? Let me pull them up. The last 6 seasons, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 seasons. Last 5 seasons, he's only exceeded 45 points once, and that was last year. 101 point season. That's great. That was the 1 year Brett Burns was not on that team. Last 4 seasons, double digits in the negatives. Also playing on a San Jose Sharks team. Take that with a grain of salt. There's questions about him. He hasn't played a full season in the last 5 years, excluding this past one. 6 years ago, he played 71 games. And then 7 years ago, he played a full season. So we're talking about 7 years, right? There's a lot of questions there. And if he's going to be an $11 million guy or whatever, I don't even know what the cap hit they're paying. Is it $10 million or is it 11? Where's Erik Karlsson? $10 million. If you're going to have a $10 million guy injured every year, producing at a rate you're expecting him to produce at a Norris rate, and he's not, there's going to be a lot of questions about that acquisition. But I have a lot of questions now. I don't necessarily know that this was the best move for Pittsburgh to make at the time. I looked at it as a big splash in the trade market. I have questions about their defense. If you have 2 lines with 2 offensive defensemen, being Karlsson, Chris Letang, being more of a defensive liability than you would like, that's going to be an issue for a team that is going to struggle to score outside their top 6. I think at this point, Toronto has a little more offensive depth than Pittsburgh. I have a lot of questions about Pittsburgh's offense. So you need your defense to be good if your offense isn't going to be good. I got questions about their defense too. That's just where we're at. Washington, I was just looking at their roster. I don't know, man. I have a lot of questions. They still have Kuznetsov up there as their number 1 center. Nicholas Backstrom, assuming he's healthy and not playing like he did last season, should be a serviceable 2 or 3C. They'll have some guys. They'll have Tom Wilson there, but it's pretty thin team at this point. I think they should be definitely steering in the direction of some type of rebuild, and I know you don't want to do that with guys like Ovechkin and Backstrom. But aside from a few big names, there's not a whole lot of guys there. You got John Carlson, that's great. Is he going to be your power play guy, or is it going to be Rasmus Sandin? There's questions on that. There's questions about how the defense is going to hold up. Their goaltending, I think, is fine. Kemper, Charlie Lindgren. I don't know. I confuse him and Ryan Lindgren from New York Rangers, how to pronounce their names. I just have questions. I don't think they're going to be all that great this year. Unfortunately, in Philadelphia, embracing the rebuild Yes, I'm excited for Flyers fans. I'm good seeing them in last place, just like Montreal, but happy they're embracing the rebuild. I think Montreal and Philadelphia are both now on the right track. Really don't like Danny Briere at all from his playing days, but he's done a great job turning this team around in the right direction. We're still going to be a few years out for Philly to be actually competitive, but they're definitely in the right direction. They made some pretty solid moves so far. I think the futures are going to look bright for both Philadelphia and Montreal, but this is both. This is the year I still have them both in last place. Well, it's this is like what first full year of Philly in the rebuild, and Montreal's about to come out of it. So we'll see. Obviously, if you want me to dive into some of these more, because there's a lot to talk about for each team, let me know. Leave a comment. I'd be happy to talk about it. Happy to make a video. Happy to explain why people are where or teams are where. Just it's been a long day, so my explanation of Pittsburgh might have been awful. Maybe I'll do a video on that. But let me know if you want a video explaining that more thoroughly. Yeah. So let me know what you think. Again, 5 playoff teams from the Atlantic, 3 from the Metropolitan. I think these 3 teams are going to be the top 4 in the Eastern Conference this year, with Toronto. I think it's going to be these 4 teams in the top 4, and I think they're going to be powerhouses, all 4 of them this year. Buffalo, big surprise. Columbus, big surprise. Boston, big drop. It was tough. After looking at some of these rosters, I almost had Boston out of the playoffs. They might even slot into that 5th spot, but I think with the amount of veterans they have back, they'll be all right. But I wore the Blue Jackets. I have them as the biggest riser. Boston, I have them as the biggest faller. Buffalo is pretty close in biggest riser, but I think Columbus, I think they're going to be pretty decent. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they're going to be right there with Buffalo. And I'm going to wear, there's going to be plenty of chances to wear a Buffalo jersey this year. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you agree with, disagree with. Drop it in the comments. I appreciate you very much. Take care, right?